welcome back to Narrative. Today, we have a really exciting guest, an artist that I've admired for a really long time, Molly Soda. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. So, I first became aware of your work when I was in high school. There's like a few videos that I like remember exactly where I was when I saw them. And your video inbox full. I like was at the in the art room in my high school, like on my laptop, and I remember seeing it and I was like, this is exactly like the art that I want to make and the art that I'm like interested in. What like was the what led you to discover art in
Mm.
the first place?
I grew up really wanting to do theater actually.
Interesting.
So I like would go to like acting camp and things like that, like day camps like in my hometown. I grew up in Indiana. And I don't think I really knew that I wanted to like be an artist or like make art until much later. I think that I thought I had a very like narrow view of what art was. Um, I wonder if I had grown up like in a different environment, maybe I would have been exposed to more things. But so I thought it was just like I was like, well, I'm bad at drawing, so I can't be an artist, like, or I don't know. And it wasn't until I was like maybe 14 that I like took my dad's like 1 megapixel camera and just became like the designated like photographer of my friend group. And I would like post our I would like make website to like post our pictures on. Like this is
Cute.
like we're talking like pre social media, like beginning of my era of like blogging and whatnot. So it wasn't until like much later that I then started taking like I took a photography class at like I grew up in a college town, and so I had a friend that was like immediately knew she wanted to be an artist, so she was taking all these like college courses in high school at like sculpture, printmaking, all these things. She's like, you should take a photography class. And so the summer before senior year, I took this like black and white photography class, and I learned about like like Cindy Sherman. I already kind of like knew who Diane Arbus was because I'd like seen one of her books like at a friend's house, and I would like always look at it and like look through it, and like there were certain books that I would always come back to like at Barnes and Noble. Like there was like a Polaroid book that I really loved, and like this one book of like 70s or like 80s punk rockers that I really loved, like a style like thing. And so I was like already like sort of interested in that, and it wasn't until I took this class that I was like, and it's funny like seeing those photos now and being like, oh, these are like this. I was like working out so many things
Mm-hmm.
in these like early photos that I took when I was 17. So after I took this class, I totally like changed direction, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna like apply to school to do photography, but I still was scared of like art school.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, I don't want to go to an art school. I don't want to do a foundations year. Like I'm really scared of like all this other stuff. And so I sort of just like that's kind of where it started, and then things kind of like expanded once I like moved to New York and like actually started learning about things that like a performance art and video art and net art and things that I just like had no in my wildest dreams I couldn't have thought about, you know?
That makes a lot of sense. I feel like I also kind of was like a photography kid.
Really?
Yeah, like I drew from a young age because I grew up in New York City, so I kind of expressed interest in art. And so my parents were like, you should take a figure drawing class. And I went to like an arts high school, and then I transferred to another high school. And I always felt like I wasn't like the drawer, even though I love
Yeah.
to draw. And then I got into doing black and white photography, and I also
Mhm.
discovered Cindy Sherman and then discovered your work like pretty close after it,
Oh,
which
really?
is like kind of like really interesting and like kind of led me to like realize that like the internet could be a place that you could also make art. And I
Mhm.
think, were like one of the first artists that I saw using the internet as a canvas. And I was
Mhm.
like, it was something that I didn't even realize was like possible.
Yeah.
And so I feel like your work to me like really inspired like a lot of the stuff I did when I was in college. And like I was telling Jeff the other day, it's like all of my college notebooks, when they write down like your inspiration, I'd write Molly Soda.
Oh my God. Wait, that's so
Yeah.
nice.
And like always like just kind of look at your work and be like, wow, like especially I feel like your piece Tween Dreams,
Oh yeah.
that had like a huge impact on me. What was like the process like? That piece is basically like you pretending to be like a bunch of middle schoolers.
Yeah, and it's sort of like I rewatched it recently, and it's sort of like different than it feels like everything feel I used to think it was like very different than the rest of my work, but now everything like in hindsight feels very
Mhm.
connected.
Yeah.
So I went to NYU for photography. Halfway through, I think most students this happens, like they have a crisis of like, what am I doing? Why
Mhm.
am I doing this? That photo program that I was in was very much like a lot of people that were really smart and double majoring and like wanted to take like really technically good photos, and I was
Mhm.
like, I'm not interested in that at all. And so Tween Dreams was actually my thesis,
Oh, whoa, that's so cool. I never knew
and
that.
it was sort of like the amalgamation of like all of the stuff that I had kind of like learned when like taking classes outside of my department, and also just being
Mhm.
like, okay, well, I'm not going to do a photo project, I'm going to do like a video piece. And so Tween Dreams was like written and directed by me. I play every character. It's sort of like a fictional TV series
Mhm.
of three girls that are best friends, and they're like all like 12 or 13, and they're sort of like navigating, like hijinks ensue, like navigating life. But I also really wanted to shoot it from the perspective of a tween,
Mhm.
because I feel like when you're that age, all you want to do is be older, and you kind of have all
Mhm.
these like thoughts about what that's like, and then the reality of that is quite different. And so it
Mhm.
was like, and I also just I wanted it to feel like it was like, because I don't know if you grew up doing this, but me and my friends would always like film ourselves
Oh
like
yeah.
performing. Like
Mhm.
we would shoot like music videos, or we would shoot like a fake SNL in my friend's
Mhm.
basement.
Yep, yep.
And so I wanted to really tap into that like kind of like pre-internet, especially
Mhm.
because this was also for me, it was before any of this would have been posted online. Like now you
Mhm.
see stuff like that, or like
Totally.
on YouTube, or like like kids like working stuff out, or like
Mhm.
filming like makeup tutorials or whatever. And so this was like that same impulse, but it was sort of before it could go anywhere. And so I
Mhm.
really wanted to feel like this thing that you like found.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I feel like that's what I loved about it was there's like a real authenticity, I think, to like all of your work that I feel like you investigate not just like I think there's like a lot of people that make art that's like about the internet, but I think you really like do it from like a really earnest place
Mm,
where like something I was like thinking about when like preparing for this was like the difference between like being a fan versus like research, and like I think your work kind of you're a fan and you're a researcher of
yeah,
all of these things that you kind of take in, and it also comes from like a personal
yeah.
background which I really connect with. And I think with that piece it's just there's something about it that it has this like I don't know. I remember I think I probably watched it like around when it came out because I was following you on Tumblr, and basically Molly was like the queen of Tumblr. What was like that like for you? Kind of like it's such a like I
um,
don't know. I like remember observing it and being like, "Whoa, like this is insane" because you were all over Tumblr.
I don't think I really fully understood what was happening at the time, or maybe I did. I don't know. I went into well, Molly Soda is like the first instance that Molly Soto was used was on Tumblr. So my
Mhm.
real name is Amalia Soto, and that's what anyone knew me as or called me leading up before 2009. And so when I created my Tumblr account, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do like this. I'm gonna be Molly Soda, but it was just a username. It wasn't like I'm doing a persona
Mhm.
necessarily. It wasn't like this big. I was rewatching Inbox Full recently, actually,
Mhm.
because I had to edit it for something, and there's like a lot of questions where people are like, it's so crazy that this is just like all one big performance art project, and like you're like, it was like funny that like people had thought that they had like really like figured it out.
Mhm.
But for me it was like I had spent so much of my youth just very naturally being, and I think you talk about like being sort of like inside of it, like what you were just saying, but like for me it's like, yeah, I'm a researcher, but I'm also a user.
Mhm.
And like I'm really interested in being inside of these things. And
Mhm.
so, and maybe that makes my work less legible to people. I find that like if people aren't like, oh, well, she's like doing an art project, or this is like, there's like a line delineating between the murkiness of being a user and being an artist, then like I think it can get confusing for people. But regardless, I think I'm interested in that. And so for me, it was already really natural. I was like already a very avid online poster. Like I would just like, I used LiveJournal, I used Zanga, I used MySpace, I used Blogspot, I used Flickr. Like I was very active in a lot of communities already. And so when a friend told me about Tumblr, I was like, okay, let me try this because it's just like was so natural for me to like sign up for any new platform. And so when it started, I remember being like, okay, I'm gonna go buy Molly Soda because I was really into Lydia Lunch at the time.
Oh,
I was
love
really into
her.
like Richard Kern and like 80s, like downtown New York. I was like into no wave and all of that stuff. Like I was just like consuming. This is also like college was so formative because I was consuming so much like new ideas and content and art, and I was just like so excited. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna be Molly Soda, and that was it. And then I remember being like, if I get like 500, I think I had like a couple hundred followers on LiveJournal
Mhm.
already, so it was like it wasn't that I came out of nowhere, but I remember being like, okay, well, when I get my first 500 followers, I'm gonna like throw a party. Like it'll be so exciting. But I wasn't like trying to be big online because there weren't really like models for that.
Yeah,
It was like like I was like a Tila Tequila, I guess, like
exactly.
Audrey Kitching. Like there was
Mhm.
some like, I was really like my guilty pleasure growing up because I was a little bit twee as like a high schooler. Like I was like into like Amelie and like
Mhm.
this sort
Oh,
of.
yeah.
I feel like I've gone back to being twee, but Tumblr was like not twee.
No, you were not twee on Tumblr.
So it was like funny because I was sort of reacting against my old impulses in real time.
Mm.
And it's funny like what got cemented
Yep.
when it was just like me kind of like trying on a new thing.
It's so interesting because I feel like I was like on the other side of the screen, like watching you on Tumblr, being like, that Unif shirt she has is so cool.
Oh
Like,
my god.
I remember you like wearing like big alien earrings, like these green neon earrings with like your like little dyed bangs, and like I think like holding like a 40 or something and being like, whoa, like this is like I don't even know how I could even like look this cool. Like I remember that like it was kind of like electric pizza, polka dots. I feel like you also like were a pioneer of like the rat as an
Yes.
accessory.
Yes.
I like grew up in the city, so I was kind of terrified of rats, and I saw you with a rat, and I was like, wait, like this is now cool too. Like it was kind of this like time, like armpit hair. I feel like was another
Mm,
trend that you were like, I feel like if you weren't like, it was pre Instagram too, which I think is like
yes.
really what for me was like important about it was like I felt like it was a time where like there was girls on Tumblr that were kind of like image girls that you kind of like knew, but I feel like you were the first person that was like doing it, but then also had this like YouTube persona, blogging, writing.
I'm always kind of processing like what certain eras were like for me online, and I'm always thinking about like the influencer and that
Mhm.
stuff, especially because on Tumblr I was sort of like pre before you could make a living
Mhm.
like doing this sort of thing, or like it just like, and I didn't veer into like I felt like there was a path that I could have taken where I like just where I think I wanted to be taken seriously as an artist so
Mhm.
badly that I was
Yeah.
like, well, I can't be like known for wearing cool clothes or like hosting parties or like this other stuff, which I also like liked doing at the time. And so I felt like there was this other path where I was like, maybe I could have been like an influencer or something.
Totally. I mean, to me, I think that's why I thought you were so interesting is because you kind of were an influencer, but you
Mm,
were like cognizant of it and
yeah.
you were making art about it. So I was like, whoa, like that is even like a lane you can do. There's so much I think now online. Like people talk a lot about like 2014 Tumblr, but I don't really think that was the peak at all.
It really confuses me when that happens, but maybe because 2014 was like the worst year of my life, so I'm just like it's like my dark year.
Yeah.
But like it feels like, but I also am like maybe 2014 Tumblr was just like, because at the same time like I was 20 2021 when I started my Tumblr, and like a
Yeah.
lot of people that are probably thinking about 2014 Tumblr were probably like quite young.
I think they were like 12 or like Romy, how old were you in 2014 Tumblr? She was 13. So I feel like that's
Yeah.
why maybe it stuck is because the like Instagram generation, that was
Yeah.
their like inciting incident. But
Yeah.
for me, I was like, I kind of stopped using Tumblr in 2014. I feel like I was
Yeah.
mainly on Tumblr from like 2011 to 20 or like 20 2000 like 10 to 2000 and like 13 was like my most active Tumblr years. And I feel like that's like 2011, 12 is when I remember seeing you
Yep.
and kind of like that taking over. And it was like a time where Tumblr, I felt like was like very lawless. Like you can kind of post whatever
Yes.
you
And you
wanted.
were friends with people that were not. I was friends with so many, like, it's just so different now. Like, I was friends with just so many random perverted guys in the Midwest, but they were like so respectful. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was kind of like it was like
Like, it was just chill. Like, they knew to, like, not overstep.
yeah, like I found this video that I recorded to submit to like a Hot Sugar like music
Oh
video
my God.
competition.
Wow.
And like I think there's been like a lot of like predator accusations against him,
Yeah.
but I like it's like a video of me in like a Dolls Kill weed leaf bralette chewing
Amazing.
gum, but he like accepted it, but then it was never in the music video. So I'm like, wait, what did he do
I
with
don't
this
even I
video?
wonder like what video that was for. But anyway, no, that's also like a really funny thing is like that time of my life is so like crystallized in this way. Um but yeah, no, I mean for me the peak of Tumblr was really like 2010 to 2013. I still am active on there.
Yes.
It's so different now and it's been so interesting to see the platform evolve and like
Mm-hmm.
through different like ownership and like different waves of people. And so I go on there now to just like kind of be anonymous. And like when someone I know or like an online friend like from Tumblr go like transfers to a different locale like Instagram, I'm like I feel like oh even more like bonded to them if they're like my friend now.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's all these people that I met on Tumblr like back in that I still am like friends with. So it was like a really generative place for me. But then there are certain accounts that I'll like wake up in the middle of the night and I'll be like, what is Janitor of Lunacy doing now?
No, I like what where are
Like
they?
where is this like where are these people? And like I feel like it
Mm-hmm.
was before the internet got really like siloed in this way. So
Mm-hmm.
because there were so like few of us on Tumblr, like
Mm-hmm.
we all had kind of different interests, but because we were like all like sort of alt in a certain way, like we
Mm-hmm.
all kind of banded together.
Yeah.
And like I was so game to like meet people
That's so
too.
interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was a like I had this one friend that I found out like grew up in a town like in like kind of like a really small town in Indiana, like
Mm-hmm.
doesn't even have a movie theater. And I grew up in Indiana too, but I grew up in like a college town. And I remember like finding out that my he was like my Tumblr friend and then like meeting up with him when I would like go
Whoa.
visit my parents for Thanksgiving
Whoa.
and just like these weird kind of like connections. I was also like really down to meet up with people from like chat roulette. Like I was really open.
No, I was kind of that way too. But like for me, I didn't really start meeting up and making friends with people till like the pandemic with Instagram.
Interesting.
I feel like I think I was like too young in high school to really make friends on Tumblr.
Yeah.
And like I feel like a
Mhm.
lot of my friends today I've met through Instagram.
Mhm.
So I feel like it's interesting that like do you feel like the friendships you've made online have been like some of the most important friendships for you?
Not necessarily.
Mm.
I think that because I was big on the internet at an early age, every most of my friendships have been touched by it, even if I didn't
Mm.
meet them online.
'Cause
Maybe
they
they
know of
had
you.
context for
Yeah.
me. Like even my current boyfriend, we've probably like known each other for like we've been together for like not like maybe 2.5 years, but like we had known each other for like 10 years, you
Mhm.
know, or like we'd been like circling each other.
Yeah.
And so it's like we didn't meet through because or through the internet, but like these things added context, right? And
Yeah.
so for me, like I have really close friendships. I mean, I'm still friends with people that I met on Zanga when I was like 14.
Whoa.
Like it's always been very, very like natural and intuitive to me. And even now, like I'm constantly like just like DMing people and being like, let's get coffee.
I love that. Wait, now I need to know what your big three are astrologically.
Do you want to guess? You
Well,
don't
you
have
well,
to.
you're very I'm getting the sense that you're very loyal.
Ooh. Okay.
And you have like some Libra energy, I'm feeling.
Yes. Libra
Okay.
moon.
Libra moon. Okay. I feel like there could be Aquarius in there.
I'm an Aquarius sun. Okay, so what's my
Yes. Oh my
rising?
God, wow, I'm killing it. Rising. I could see Leo, maybe, but I don't think so.
Mm,
Fuck, okay. Now I'm like 2 for 3, so I feel like I have to get it.
I feel like it might be
Is it a
I'm a
water
little bit
sign?
it's not. I don't have any I mean, I guess you have everything in your chart,
Yeah.
but I don't have like any real water in my chart.
So it's Aquarius sun, Libra moon, Aries rising?
I'm
No.
a Gemini rising.
I was gonna say that.
So I'm like all
Shit.
air, but all my other signs are earth. Like I have a lot of Capricorn and
Oh,
Taurus in the rest of my chart.
wow. That makes a lot of sense.
And
Why
like
that's a good
no
chart.
fire, no like it's kind of weird though, like not really any fire. I think the only water is like Pluto, like Scorpio, but that's like generational.
Yeah.
So
That's so interesting because I feel like that makes a lot of sense why you're so good at the internet because it's in the
yeah.
air. And then you have like a very chill, grounded, like you're able to handle it. I feel like Aquarius is, I feel like it's a really interesting sign because it's like the rarest sign in the zodiac.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's like the least number of people are like Aquarius suns.
That's interesting.
I don't know. Because are you February or
I'm
January?
January.
Yeah, I think it's like one of the rarest ones. But I have a good friend that's an Aquarius, and she's like a lot of Aquarius in her or air in her chart. She's also like super good at understanding the internet
Yeah.
and like really, and it makes sense. Like Aquariuses are great friends, very like loyal, love being in a group.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I find that I have very little I feel like I'm a really easy friend. Like I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I not that I have like low expectations, but I just like I'm never like upset with people or like I'm okay with meeting people where they meet,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm maybe not going to be the most like texty with you. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be like chatting with you all day.
Yeah. No,
Like I'm a little detached.
that's good. I feel like it's nice. I am a Cancer.
Yeah, I thought maybe you were a Pisces. I don't know
I
why.
have a lot of Pisces. Romy's a Pisces, and I
Okay.
surround myself with a lot of Pisces. But Cancer moon, Cancer sun, Leo moon, Capricorn rising.
Love that.
Yeah, thank you. So, okay, this brings me to something else I really wanted to talk about, which is I feel like the role of spirituality in your work. I
Okay.
I feel like so much of your work kind of touches at it, like your doll tarot, like the
Yeah.
themes of manifestation boards in your most recent play,
Mhm.
like also the internet as kind of this like network spirituality grand experiment of like
Mm.
connecting people through this like invisible web.
Yeah.
Is that something you think about with your
I've
work?
never thought about that.
Interesting.
I feel like with the tarot deck, I mean, I enjoy tarot, I enjoy
Mhm.
astrology. Sometimes I have to take breaks from them because I
Mhm.
have like control issues. So sometimes I'm like, I don't it's like making me mentally ill to like think about the future or like try and predict the future, so I
Yep.
like can't I have to like taper. Like I think all of 2024 I was like I can't read my horoscope. I
Oh,
just recently started
interesting.
reading it again,
Mhm.
but like so for me it's almost like it can be very fraught.
Mm.
But with the tarot deck it just like to me it made a lot of sense. I'm also interested in archives and like the web is so volatile and like changing all the time like underneath, and like we take a lot of the stuff that we do online for granted, but also we are really like embarrassed of everything that we do all the time, and like there's this like added self-consciousness to the internet because everything is sort of like saved and uploaded, where like for example the video that like you took with your friends in the basement,
Mhm.
maybe you throw it away
Yeah.
because you're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I did that."
Mhm.
And then now it's like you delete it from YouTube or these things. So for me there's also like I'm interested in like preserving certain things
Mhm.
because I think it's our impulse to not take the things that are happening in real time seriously because we're
Mhm.
exhausted by them
Yeah.
and we find them to be mundane or annoying. And so I think the tarot was also like trying to is like almost a preservation effort and also just like a fun object.
Yeah.
But I think with the vision boarding stuff that I've been interested in recently, like I think The manifest, I've been thinking a lot about like manifestation and about these sort of like ways that spirituality is like kind of wielded and used online, and sort of how so much of what we consume is like aspirational, and
Mhm.
also like how that performance is really like honed in. And like, I think about like what makes me follow someone, what
Mhm.
makes me, because it's funny because like maybe people looked at me a certain way and they're like, I want to be like Molly,
Mhm.
right? And then there's people that I have like that
Yeah.
as well, that I'm like, oh, I follow them, and like I inadvertently like buy the same
Mhm.
groceries as them, or like I start to like model my life, maybe like borrowing from their taste or whatever it is. And I think, what is it that makes me want to follow that? What are like the things that have to line up that
Mhm.
make me want to follow that person? And for me, I really have to like investigate that. And I'm like, it's this careful blend of like, and maybe everyone is different, but I think generally speaking, when it comes to like this influencer space, or people that get paid for being themselves online, which I'm really interested in, is there's this careful blend of like, well, they need to be like similar enough to me in a way that I could potentially be like them, but they also need to be a notch above me, or like
Mm.
aspirational in a certain way. And then I think about like sort of manifesting in like that language, and how it's like, and I always had this impulse, even at a young age, where I was always like looking at other people and being like, I want to be like that person. I'm mood board. I'm like, my haircuts folder is like my mood board. That was like my first, mood board, right? It was
Mhm.
like just pictures of other girls.
Yeah.
It's like I wanted their hair, but I didn't just want their hair. I wanted like that, their like whatever their essence was, or
Totally.
whatever I projected onto them. And like I remember even like my best friend, we would like box dye our hair all the time in high school, and she would be like, "Oh, I just picked the hair dye with the prettiest woman on it."
I love that.
And I was
That's
like,
so
it's just like
good.
this core
Mhm.
thing that we all have, because we're always like searching, right? We're like
Mhm.
addicted to the search, and the search must continue, or else we just like we can't like fathom what it feels like to just like not be looking or not be searching. And so I'm interested in sort of manifestation and like sort of aspirational or like that content, but I try not to lean like too woo woo with it.
Mhm.
I think for me, I'm trying to like nod at it, but I'm also trying to like question what that is inside of me
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, I feel like it's like almost which what I see with your work is like it's like a search, like this eternal search of the self.
Yeah.
Like kind of regurgitating yourself and then like also like consuming yourself while you're also like thoughtfully consuming all those around you and then kind of like making work that's an amalgamation of those ideas and perceptions of yourself, but also like the way, as you were saying, it's reflected in like the way it's like reflected back at you and you're reflecting into it and
Mhm.
other people. And I find that like super relatable because I feel like for me, I've always like when I'm online, I'm always like, okay, like what can I improve about myself? When I first met you was like at the first event for Trivial Pursuit at Meta Label,
Yeah.
and you were like it was like I think like was it like the first performance of
Yeah.
parts of it?
Yeah.
And you were like hugging a tree the whole time. And I was like, whoa, she's so based. Like
I don't think I even like clocked that I was
you were,
doing that.
but you were just like standing watching it and there was like a plant that was there and you were just like holding the plant so tenderly. And I was like, this is like awesome. And then I like was kind of like, oh, are those your plants? And you were like, no, but like did have like a plant addiction.
Oh yeah,
And you told me about
totally.
Steve's leaves.
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah.
So like what have been like kind of your most consuming online like wormholes?
Ooh, wormholes. I mean, there's been a lot. I've gone through a lot of phases.
Mhm.
Um, I was really, and there were certain things that are private,
Yeah.
right? That were like not, and I've never really made work about. I mean, earliest were probably like when I was a teenager. I was like, my guilty pleasure was Scene Queens. Like I
Mm.
was like, I'm twee, so like I can't be into Audrey Kitching, but I'm like obsessed with looking at pictures of her.
I can kind of see that in your look when you were
Yeah.
in college.
Yeah, and like that was me sort of like getting to
Mhm.
embody that like later.
Yeah.
I was also really into like the cobra snake
Oh, yeah.
as like a teen, and so I would like kind of obsessively look
That
at like
website.
pictures in
Yeah.
high school. I was really into like I was like, oh, I remember there was one girl, it wasn't Corey Kennedy, although I was a big fan.
Mhm.
There was another girl that would show up in the photos and she had like black hair or like dark brown hair, maybe like my hair color, and then it was like kind of wavy and like maybe like shoulder length and like bangs. And I was like, she was like, I don't know who she was, because that's the other thing.
It's
You
not
didn't know
Nikki
who any.
Takesh, no.
No, it wasn't Nikki Takesh, but it was like just like some
One of
random
those
girl.
girls, yeah.
And I remember being like really fixated on her
Mhm.
specifically. And I remember her having black nail polish, but it was chipped. And so I remember like painting my nails black and then like chipping it.
I'm obsessed.
And so like there were always, and then I'm thinking about like other times, right? And then maybe like in 2013 was when I really discovered like beauty YouTube.
Mhm.
And I was like,
Yeah.
what is happening here?
Oh
Like
my
I
god,
was
yeah.
like Graveyard
Oh,
Girl.
yes,
And
yes.
the funny thing is that like
Funny.
this was all stuff that I wouldn't allow myself to fully embody because I was
Mhm.
on it. I felt like I was on a different
You were on the art
trajectory.
path at that point.
And I was also like, and even like I think about YouTubers and I'm like, there are no YouTubers that like maybe I first of all, a lot of them I would watch and I'd be like, we wouldn't be friends.
Yeah.
Like they wouldn't like me, or like
I feel the
they
same
would think
way.
I was weird, or like
Mhm.
whatever, like we don't have the same references or whatever, but for
Mhm.
whatever reason I would get really attached to them. So
Yep.
Graveyard Girl was one, Kathleen
Oh
Lights
my god,
was
Kathleen
another
Lights.
one, and I think I
Oh,
really
I
liked
love her.
her specifically because she was like from Miami, like Cuban American.
Mhm.
She like reminded me of my sister, so I just like had this like sort of connection to
Did
her.
she do that decluttering series? Or was I feel
Um,
like I like have this vision in my head of her brunette, like
brunette, like
very sweet.
long hair,
Mhm.
like very petite. Like
Yeah.
she now has like she's still like around. She has like a nail polish brand.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember her. Wait, keep going with the YouTubers though.
Leanne, I got into Leanne Says. I don't know if you know her. She's sort of like a Houston. Her and Bunny,
Mhm.
Graveyard Girl were like friends, and Leanne actually like follows me back on
Whoa.
because this was another sweet spot where like I was kind of like on Tumblr, so maybe if they were like alt enough, maybe they knew me. And so
Mm.
there was this weird thing where I was like kind of interfacing with some of the YouTubers. And I think there was even a point where I was like, I want to like make work with like a beauty YouTuber, but I never really
That would have
was
been
able
so
to like
cool.
get there. You know, like I've always wanted to like work with influencers.
Mhm.
Like I use myself in my work. And I think sometimes people are like, oh, you're like so like vulnerable, and I'm like, what do you know about me? Like but like really, like what do people like actually know about me?
No, I know. I feel
Like
like
you don't know anything about my personal life.
and I feel like that's what's interesting about your persona as like someone that's a big fan of like YouTube and then kind of seeing yours as like a artistic almost like kind of like a it's almost like you it's like a painting. It's like
Yeah.
in an abstract painting, you don't like it's like an abstract painting of an influencer is like
Hmm.
what your work kind of exists as. Have like a really interesting relationship to your audience where it's like an art audience that doesn't really normally consume influencer culture. And so I think that's like an interesting dichotomy. Like,
Yeah.
have you ever thought about making kind of more like YouTuber y like work where you kind of like talk more about like yourself, or do you like want that to be off limits?
I think there were times where I really wanted to veer into that. I
Mm-hmm.
don't get that craving anymore because I'm not looking for the same things that I was looking for online as a user back when I started, and back when I was like I'm still really interested in all of this stuff, but like I think when I was younger, I just really wanted to be seen, and it didn't
Mm-hmm.
matter to me whether it was positive or negative. It was just like I wanted to be looked at, and it wasn't. And I think that's why I always like felt like I had thick skin,
Yeah.
was that I felt very detached from like even if it was like me,
Mm-hmm.
I still felt like very like take it or leave it, like it's fine. Um so but I don't have that like craving anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe because I feel fulfilled in other areas of my life, or maybe because I've just like aged out of it or whatever. But no, there were definitely times where I would like I really wanted to like I almost was like maybe I just go down the pure YouTuber route, you
Yeah.
know? Like especially like around like maybe like the late 2010s was when
Mm.
I was like kind of dabbling with that. And everyone, if you go to my YouTube account, which has like 500 videos, but like if you go, like you'll see certain instances of that where I'm like making a Whole Foods haul or like
Yeah.
I'm doing some of these videos and they're not really like conceptual like art things. They're just kind of like I was in the mood to do that and I wanted to do that.
Mhm.
And I think it's interesting that when I do make those videos, they're actually quite hard to make.
They are, yeah.
It's very difficult to talk at a camera and seem natural and
Mhm.
seem relaxed.
Yeah. No,
And I
totally.
think like I don't think that and I'm constantly thinking about all the labor that it takes to construct sort of an effortless vibe.
Yes.
And I really love like there's this best dressed video where she is are you familiar you know best dressed?
Mhm.
Um where she's like showing the sort of scene behind the scenes of her filming a video and you just see her repeat she's in her car and she's just repeating the same phrase over and over and over again. You can see her getting like
Love that.
frustrated because
Yeah.
it's not coming out right.
Oh my
And
god.
like that labor of like acting natural is like
Mhm.
so deeply interesting to me. And
Yes.
also, so for me, it was like, even when I did try to make those videos, I was like, I'm not interested in, I'm interested in like the what's happening as I'm making the video, but I'm not as interested in like the video itself, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of like why I'm so obsessed with Trisha Paytas,
Yeah.
is I think she's so unbelievably talented at
Yes.
being herself on camera
So
and
natural.
so natural and like she like what's crazy about Trisha is like I think people are always like she's this, she's that, she's whatever. I'm like, but you're watching her and she's like so effortlessly entertaining. And she never
Hmm.
edits her videos.
She never edits
She shoots
them.
them in one take.
Yeah.
She doesn't like wasting time. Like she like I've watched her talk about it a lot, like how she makes her videos and she just turns the camera on and then turns it off and that's it. She
Yeah.
doesn't she was saying with her TikTok, she's like, I don't want to film something twice.
No.
And it's like incredible that she's that like
And
talented
she's
at
that captivating because
exactly.
most people, if they were to just post an unedited video, we would turn it off.
Exactly. And I don't know, do you have like any YouTubers that you would like if you met them would be like freaked out or like
I
excited
think I would
to?
be freaked out. I actually don't think I want to meet any of my YouTubers.
Yeah.
Also, like, it's funny because YouTube is not what it used to
No, not
be.
at all.
And so there's really like it's been a while since I've followed an influencer
Mhm.
actually. Like I feel like I'm in a bit of a rut. There's like
Mhm.
one TikToker that I sort of like, but like even then I feel like I have to like curb it a little
Mhm.
bit or like not get too um deep, but yeah, I don't know. And I find that that's who I am maybe to some people as
Mhm.
well, and I think sometimes I get confused by that
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Oh, we're not like I'm not supposed to meet
Yeah.
certain people or like they don't like I mean something to them that is like different than like maybe what I want to be to them or like there's certain you know
Mhm.
what I mean or
Totally.
there's even certain online friends that like they're not like influencers or like famous or anything but I'm like maybe we just never need to meet.
Does that ever like freak you out or do you feel like comfortable with it?
It doesn't freak me out
That's so
at all.
interesting.
I think maybe there have been times where I've felt frustrated by it maybe
Mhm.
but I think I've just come to terms with that or like I feel like I have a pretty I don't know. There was this I don't yeah, I don't know. I think that also like as you age, people like I think when you're younger and you have maybe more visibility. Like I don't think I have the visibility that I had. I think I'm like more successful maybe or like
Mhm.
more established as an artist, but I don't have like I'm not as like relevant. It's like really funny
Yeah.
actually. Does that make
No, I
sense?
get what you're saying. It's like I
Yeah.
think you have like almost like I think like the work that you're most known for is like this time capsule in and now you can kind of like speak to it and then also I think what's like really cool that you're doing is like through like teaching and working with Meta Label like really like garnering like the like and helping young artists, which I think
Mhm.
is like a really interesting aspect of like where your career is now that you like I don't know, I'm curious about the whole Meta Label situation. Like what
Mhm.
how has that come about and what's your role there?
So I released a sort of like an artist book series with them, which is where you saw the first iteration or like a really small iteration of Trivial Pursuit back in June. And then they sort of just like reached out. I enjoyed working with them on it. They were
Mhm.
sort of like young, and they had reached out and were like, would you like to curate for us? So I've been like curating for them since August. And it's been really fun. Honestly, it's just really fun to have an excuse to reach out to other artists
Mhm.
and like do studio visits with them, especially because I feel like, well, one, I regret not having just already had like a robust practice of doing that before.
Mhm.
It's nice to like have a job that lets me do that now. Also with teaching, like I just like love talking to people about their work. I like love crit. I love like a studio visit. I love one-on-one time. Like I love when people talk about what they're making. I love also just like comparing notes with other artists about like certain things.
Mhm.
And so for me, it's been really generative and nice. And like, even if like nothing comes of it or like we don't like end up working together on anything, it's just like nice to sort of be in the flow of like seeing other people's work or like talking to them kind of about what they're doing. Cause I think that making art can sometimes really like isolate you.
Totally.
And I think also being an artist that like, I don't think I realized I think there was sort of like a I wish that I had had kind of the foresight to be like you're going to find people in person. Like
Mhm.
you can't rely on the internet for everything.
Mm.
And so like you're not going to like yes, you can find like community or like certain things and like people like there's so many people on the internet that I've collaborated with and that like are good friends, but I'm like you have to go to things and you have to
Mhm.
show up. And like that's what I love about you is that I feel like you go
Aw.
to everything.
Oh, really?
I'm like, you like love art so much and you like
Thanks.
go to so many shows and talks. And I
Aw.
feel like I'm like, I should have been doing that when I was younger. And I felt like even I was telling someone else this story, but I remember so I lived in New York
Mhm.
from 2007 to 2011. And then I moved to Chicago. Then I lived in Detroit. And then I moved back to New York at the end of 2016.
Mhm.
And I remember I don't know what like was happening in my brain.
Mhm.
I lived in Detroit and like I was really close friends with a bunch of people that just were not online people at all. Like
Mhm.
it was just like a small city, so it was like really easy to make friends and like just like everyone was like kind of on a different path, but like everyone was really supportive of each other. I feel like in cities like New York or like bigger cities, you find people that like look like you and dress like
Mhm.
you and like maybe are into the same thing, which is fine. But I was like coming from this sort of like Midwestern city where I was just like, yeah, no one knows like what the hell I'm up to or like
Mhm.
doing. Like it's so separate.
Mhm.
And then I moved to New York and I was like, "Ugh, okay, I'm gonna have so many friends here because I have so many online friends that live in New York.
Yeah.
Like, what was I thinking? And then I get here and I'm like, that's obviously not true. Like, these aren't
Mm.
your actual friends.
It's true.
And so it was like actually quite isolating
I
when I
bet.
first got here, like after college, like without having the structure of like college.
Yeah, I also kind of had a similar experience like growing up here, then leaving for college and then coming
Hmm.
back, being like, oh, I have to like all the work that I put in to be like popular citywide and high school like doesn't count because all those people are gone. And now I
Yeah.
have to like make all new friends and like navigate a totally different social scene than I remember existing in New York. While there is like a lot of people that like look and dress the same, it's hard to kind of sometimes that I feel like almost can be a barrier
Yeah.
in getting to know people because they can look like you, but then you start to talk to them and it's
Yeah.
like, oh wait, we're actually like don't have any similar interests
Yeah,
and
it's
like
true.
maybe you're interested. And I'm sure for you, like coming back to New York with like a level of notoriety and success can be really isolating in a way too because you don't know what people want from you.
It made me really mentally ill, to be honest. Like I feel like I'm like deep I'm like way on the other side of it.
Yeah.
But I felt like for me there was also a time where like also so when I was on Tumblr, I was like drinking and like
Mhm.
doing drugs or like pretty openly on the
Yeah.
internet and like I don't like have any regrets with that. It's kind of funny like go back and look at some of that stuff and be like, "Oh, okay, cool. Whatever." And but I don't delete anything. And then I got sober at the very end of 2014. And so like when I got sober, it was like a whole entire like new process of like reorienting myself
Totally.
in the world and like how
Yeah.
I was going to interface with like going out. And then it was also a time where I felt like, and this happens to everyone, is like once you get to a certain level of visibility, you start to have people that actively like don't fuck with you.
Mhm.
And that's like fine. And I feel like when I was on Tumblr, I sort of had like this like aura where I was like, well, I don't fucking care
Mhm.
because like I'm drunk or like
Yeah.
I'm young, I'm like 22, like I don't care. Like, and then I think it would happen where I would go to an event, I would go to like a party and then I would leave and then I would hear that like people were discussing me after I had
Oh
left or like these
no.
things where I was like, oh yeah, like this is like bleeding into my real life and like I'm not like necessarily always anonymous or like I
Mhm.
don't know who knows who I am and who doesn't. And I think a lot of people deal with this. Like I think
Yeah.
this is like not unique to me. I think that like everyone has the potential of like having those experiences if you have any sort of like
Mhm.
online footprint at all.
Yeah.
And so because you're just like being perceived in this way and I felt very like out of control in that and I think in Detroit I felt very sort of safe because I was
Mhm.
like, well, everyone knows me because of me like being in the
Mhm.
world.
Yeah.
And now I'm in New York and people don't know me because of me being in the world. People know me as someone from the internet. And
Yeah.
so and I think even thinking back to like Trivial Pursuit and like casting people that are like kind of have their own kind of online footprint or whatever, I'm like, I just feel like they get where I'm coming from. And it
Mhm.
was really important for me to work with people that like maybe also have these kinds of like these own kind of iterations of that.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting because all of the figures in Trivial Pursuit have their own kind of like work that explores their identity online versus their lived identity in
Yeah.
real life, and then seeing them kind of play these characters was so interesting. And they're not, I mean, I think, I don't know about Maya and Mackenzie if they have acting background. I know Maya has like a dance background,
Yeah.
but I felt like they all were so incredible as
Oh, they're really
actors.
good actors. Yeah. I got really
Yeah,
lucky.
they were so great. And I was like fortunate to see kind of like three iterations of
Yeah.
Trivial Pursuit, which was really cool. Like I saw the first one and then I went to the dress rehearsal, which was amazing and very grateful to have been there. And then I saw it live at Pageant. Is it three pageants or two
I
pageant?
think the username is three pageants maybe, but
But
it's
it's
just
just Pageant.
pageant.
That's what I
Yeah.
thought. And that was really cool to like see it with an audience.
Yeah.
And it was a like every time I saw it, it was really different. I
Hmm.
think it started off more as like kind of like a work that was like almost like a game. It was like a game where
Hmm.
like they were kind of playing a game while performing, and then
Yeah.
it kind of became more of like a structured play.
Mm.
Did you ever script it? Is there a script at the end of it, or is
It
it?
is scripted. So like half of it is like this game like structure where they're essentially what happens for those that aren't familiar is that there's a bunch of printed out they're making a vision board together. There's a bunch of pieces of paper on the ground, like 300 to 400 pieces of paper, and there's text on the back. And so whatever they pick up is like what gets read out loud and
Mm-hmm.
it's different every time it's performed, but then there are these vignettes where they're like there's actual scripted text and there's like maybe a few of them in the
Mm-hmm.
final iteration. Maybe there were like 3 to 4 like
Mm-hmm.
small vignettes where they're sort of like moving the plot
Mm-hmm.
along. And it's sort of just them kind of like doing these little like sometimes they're doing an activity that like involves the audience. Like at one
Mm-hmm.
point they vote one of them off, at the end they vote one of them off, like
Yeah.
because they realize like two is better than three, and like
Mm-hmm.
it gets kind of chaotic, but it was always gonna be a little bit scripted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think initially when I drafted it, I wanted it to be like really variable. Like I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, scenes will happen like at different points depending on like what gets drawn. But then I needed like more constraints because I was just worried that like the audience relying too much on my audience
Mm-hmm.
was gonna be difficult, I
Yeah.
think, to like participate or like move the play along, especially if they didn't know.
Yeah.
So, but it's interesting because I think if I were to do the play again, which I would like to, it would probably change a little bit
Yeah.
again.
Would you want to work with like different actors or?
I really loved working with my performers, and so I'd like to keep them as long as like
Mhm.
as long as they are willing to, and as long as like we can I basically we worked on this for free,
Yeah.
and so I think if we were to do it again, I'm like everyone has to get paid.
Mm-hmm.
If we travel, like everyone gets everything. Like it has to be like above board. Like no more
Yeah.
DIY.
No, I feel like that's what's hard is like when you're experimenting and doing things, like I found just like in my experience of like this year, like I put on like 5 DIY shows in a 3 month period,
Mhm.
and I like went into like so much credit card debt,
Yeah.
and like I feel like it's like I feel like now it's funny because I have all the documentation, I have everything, but it's like now I have to do the work of like then representing it
Exactly. You have to
and like
remind
remind people that it
people.
happened if they weren't
Yeah.
there, and then it's just like I think there's like so much stress with like being an artist and wanting to like keep pushing yourself to do new things is like you're constantly, I think especially when your work isn't traditional like yours
Yes.
is like you're constantly having to like legitimize it
Yeah.
and then like do it and then get people to like
Yeah.
and like it almost, I don't know, it's really interesting. I saw on your Substack that you recently like lost all your like laptop, which I'm really sorry about. Molly had to like wipe her laptop because she forgot her password that she changed during
Which is
Trivial.
such a stupid problem. I felt like I had like locked my keys in my car and I could like see them.
Oh my god, that I actually did that with this gallery that I did a show at this year, and I had to sledgehammer a window.
Did you and you had to pay for it to get repaired?
Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, because I had to get to work and like the keys were like right there and part of the window was already broken. So I was like, I might as well
Just break it more.
yeah. So, but like at the end of your post, you wrote this thing that was like, will my like upload outlive my life?
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, like that is such an interesting. I was like, OMG.
Galaxy brain.
Like, will it? Like, oh my God. Like, I mean, it will. And I think that's interesting when your work revolves so much around like you as the character.
Yeah.
And like, I like you were just in Paris and your work was like now added to like the Pompidou's permanent collection, which is
Mhm. Thank
congratulations.
you.
That's so amazing. Like, it must be really cool to get to see and like interesting, like these kind of vignettes of yourself preserved in all these spaces. And you were with Avita, is that how you pronounce her name?
Arvita.
Arvita,
Yeah.
yeah. Who also I remember from Tumblr.
Yeah, we met on Tumblr.
Mm-hmm.
We actually didn't meet for we worked on a book together
Mm-hmm.
actually, of images that had been like removed from Instagram. It came
Cool.
out through Perstel. It's kind of weird. I feel like it hasn't aged. I'm like too close to it. I think it
You
came
need
out
to
in
check that out. Yeah.
2017. Um, and but we actually met. We started working on that book before we had met in person.
Oh,
Like we were just
whoa.
like messaging on Facebook, and I was like, let's make a book. Like, who do we know that could publish this? Um, and but she's living in Paris right now, so I saw her,
Oh,
and so we
cool.
did a talk. So there's a now a friend, but I didn't know her initially. She's like working on her PhD
Mm-hmm.
at the Sorbonne, and she's writing about both me and Arvita. So we like did a talk to like a class there,
That's so cool.
and then I had a screening at the It actually all happened on the same day. I decided to schedule everything for the same day, so I also had a screening and like talk at the Pompidou to like celebrate the acquisition of 3 video pieces, including Inbox Full,
Wow.
which
Oh,
is
okay.
great. I'm so happy it's being preserved. But the funniest thing about Inbox Full is that the original file I lost in like another hard drive crash. So the video that they own is a YouTube rip,
That's so
which
funny.
is like, I mean, it's probably a photo booth video from 2012 is probably quite low quality
Yeah.
regardless. So I don't know how much nicer like the MOV file,
Mm-hmm.
original MOV file would have been.
Yeah.
But it's like interesting how these platforms sometimes end up like kind of preserving things that I don't even have access to anymore.
Yeah, I feel like that's what's so interesting about the internet, and I feel like Maya Mann's work, like really, she
Yeah.
delves into that a lot, is like the impermanence of it.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, I mean, I think like art itself is also something where it's like you can make a drawing on a piece of paper, and like if you leave it in the sun, it's going to disappear.
Absolutely.
And like with the internet, it's like you can make a website, but if you don't pay for hosting,
Yep.
it's going to disappear.
And I think that's what's so frustrating about making work that feels like it's responding to sort of a current thing
Mm-hmm.
is like people just really belittle it in this way that's like really frustrating.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you are going to want this.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't even think that like anyone needs, like, for me, like my archiving has never been exhaustive and it's not, I'm not interested in it being exhaustive, but like, I am sort of interested in like what remains or like what sticks or like what takes on a new sheen in like a few
Mm-hmm.
years. Like I'm really interested in time, I think,
Mm-hmm.
in my work and like memory. And so, but no, people really like really, really don't like when you're working with kind of like this kind of content, even
Especially,
though everyone consumes it.
and especially if you do it in an earnest way.
I think there's a real fear of like being too interested in something. I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
very New York thing. Like you can't want anything too bad.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't like you can't like go up to people and tell them you know who they are.
Yeah,
Like
even though
people
you
really don't like
do.
that.
Yeah.
I love it personally, and I like make a point when I see people, and I don't think I used to do this, and I go, I'm a really big fan. Like
I love that.
I try and like really be like, no, you don't know me, but like I'm a fan of yours, and like I'm not too cool to tell you that. And like I don't need to like I'm not trying to like punish you with like a conversation, but like I like what you do. And so, but I do think there's sort of like an aloofness or like a
Mm-hmm.
detachedness, and I think sometimes the art world also really like likes that in
Mm-hmm.
a
Yep.
way because it makes it more legible. I
Yeah.
think for someone like you or I or a lot of other artists that I like, they're like, well, what is it though? Like,
Yeah.
I need you to tell me how to feel about this. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
not telling me, then like, how am I supposed to feel about it?
Exactly. And I feel like it's hard because it's like I think people don't want to admit when they're like moved or like people I
Yeah.
think are more comfortable. I think especially with like the reactionary culture we're in and like living in kind of like a hate spiral where like they don't like anything and
Yeah.
they never talk about what they like. And like
Yeah.
I'm very like pro liking things. What's your morning routine?
Okay, my morning routine, I get up around 7 a.m.
Mhm.
if I'm sleeping normally. And I usually look at my phone first thing in the morning. I
Mhm.
usually check my email or
Mhm.
like any text messages. I have cats, so they do wake me up in the
Mhm.
night. So if I haven't fed them yet, because sometimes I'll wake up and feed them and then go back to bed.
Mhm.
If I haven't fed them yet, I feed them. I give one of my cats this medication. I make a coffee. And then usually, like, honestly, depending on how early it is, I might just like start working. Like
Mhm.
I don't really have like a long drawn out routine. Like I'm
Yeah.
usually like starting in at like 8 a.m.
I feel like I'm the same way. When do you
Yeah.
kind of like decide the day is over?
That's the problem for
I
me. So
feel like that's very Aquarius.
it's a really big problem for me. If I have plans, the day is over. Well, like the day is over. If I'm alone in my apartment and like I don't have any plans that day, I will probably work until I go to bed. Or like work can be like it can be fluid though. Like I'll like send any like I might not send any emails after like 6 p.m., but I
Mm-hmm.
might like do something else that feels like related, you
Mm.
know. Or I go in and out. Like maybe I'll take a
Yeah.
2 hour break in the middle of the day and like work until like 10 or something. What about you?
I feel like I wake up around 7. I also kind of similarly will like get into work. I feel like it's hard for me to like I don't know. I feel like I can fall into like a lot of like phone loopholes.
Mm,
I'm very like vulnerable to like having high screen time.
yeah,
I feel like I've gotten better. I feel like it's down to like 5 hours, but
yeah.
like I've definitely gone through like 13-hour
Oh
phases.
my God. I don't think I've ever gotten that far.
Yeah, I feel like that was like when I was really into like I don't know, like a lot of darker sides of the internet. But
Mm,
yeah, I feel like it's now that I'm not like I'm working like a more an email job again and not like an in-person job, I feel like it's shifted, but I'm figuring it out. I feel like I'm trying to like get out of the house early in the morning.
I would like to do more of that, but
Mhm.
I think also now that it's like
Cold. world. Yeah.
Yeah, I also think if I lived with my like partner or something,
Hmm.
it would be like a little bit different, but
Yeah.
like it's so just like if I'm alone, yeah, I'll just be like at my computer pretty much all day.
Yeah.
Maybe go for a walk to like go to the post office or like get
Hmm.
groceries or something.
Yeah, I kind of do the same thing where I'll like either like go for a walk to the park or like have like an errand. Like I like making like soup, so I'll like,
Love making I had lentil soup before I came over here.
oh, lovely. Okay. And then I guess final question is what's your perfect day?
Oh, okay. My perfect day. I wake up early. I go for a long walk,
Mhm.
maybe to like I'm not gonna say where I live actually, but maybe to like the water or
Mhm.
something, have a coffee over there, go and like maybe like go and have something like delicious to eat or like
Mhm.
make like if I could like go to a farmer's market
Mm,
and then like make a really like delicious like fresh meal or salad for lunch, and then I feel like I would probably I don't know, my perfect day is like honestly long walk and like eating really good food. Like when I
mhm.
have a day off to do something, I do big walk, which
Mhm.
means like I walk to like another neighborhood, and it like usually is like 1 to 2 hour walk,
I
maybe
love
like a three
that.
hour walk, and then I like go try something that I haven't tried before.
Wait, that's such a I love the idea of big walk.
Big walk is like crucial to me. So like generally my perfect day involves big walk and then like really delicious reward at the end,
That's so
and then like
smart.
go to bed like so tired.
Oh, wow. That sounds great. I feel like I kind of do like a version of that where I'll like take the train somewhere in the city and like walk
Mhm.
around, but like I'm gonna inherit big walk.
You should do Big Walk, like, and I really recommend one that I do a lot is Brighton Beach because it's
Mm,
about a like it's a long walk from my house. It's like you would think because I live like sort of more south, like it would be closer, but it's like 2.5 hours.
whoa, that's a big walk.
So, and then you get there and you're like, okay, I'm gonna have something like really delicious
Do you
now.
walk back afterwards or do you take the
Sometimes
train?
if I have the energy. If not,
Mm.
I'll like take a bus or the train or
So it's
like a
like a
car.
2 hour walk destination is what you choose.
Not always. I also like love going to a neighborhood I don't know very well.
Mm.
Like have you ever walked around Mill Basin?
No, but I should. That's smart.
Like sometimes I'll pick like kind of a random spot.
That's really cool. Well, thank you so much, Molly, for being a guest.
Thank you for having me.
um, this has been another episode of the Narrative Podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow us to stay updated. Bye.
Thank you.